Loops are short digital audio clips which are often designed to be repeated over and over, or looped, although some loops called one-shots are only intended to play just once. On this drums track, for instance, this is a piece of audio that has been looped. You can see the section here that was looped, and it was looped over and over. And then you can see the section here below with a symbol that is just a one-shot. Let's listen to an audio example now of the looped audio with the one-shot added together. Groove clips, often used as loops, are digital audio clips that know their tempo and pitch information. Groove clips automatically respond to changes in a project's tempo and can have their root note pitch adjusted using pitch markers. In Cakewalk by BandLab, you can import acidized loops or digital audio clips and convert them to groove clips. You can even record your own audio and create groove clips from that. The browser lets you find and import various types of content into your projects, including audio and MIDI loops. The browser's Media tab makes it easy to find and import loops. You can preview audio and MIDI files before you ever even import them into your project using the browser window. If you preview a groove clip, it plays back at the tempo and in the key of the current project. Audio files can be auditioned through any bus, and MIDI files can be auditioned through any soft synth. In order to open up my browser menu window, I can simply hit the B button on the keyboard. As you can see here, I have a whole list of selections from my plugins, notes, and my media that I can then go through and figure out what exactly I'd like to use. From here, I can also set where I would like for the loop to preview. By going to Audio Preview Bus, I can set this to my master or to a separate bus that makes sense to me. For now, I'm going to set it to the master bus. Let's take a look now at the browser window. This section here shows the media browser. The small triangle next to it shows you your browser menu. This window here is the Content Location menu. This will tell you where you're at within the context of the folders that are on your PC. This here will allow you to dock or undock the media browser. The areas highlighted in blue will allow me to dock it in that area. This small drop-down is the docking menu options. These small arrows here will expand or collapse my menu. And this small folder will allow me to move up one level. In the small window that contains the magnifying glass, I can actually type in and search for specific content. And by hitting this red X button, I can then clear the search field and it'll take it right back to where I had it before. When I have a loop selected and I'd like to audition it for my project, I can simply hit the play stop button here. By going back up to this small drop-down menu, I can actually set it to auto preview as well, and then loop the preview so that I can hear it more than once. This is very helpful when auditioning loops so that you don't have to keep pressing play and stop. In order to play back and preview MIDI notes, I'm going to make sure that I've inserted a soft synth, in this case, Addictive Keys. Now I can also make sure that from this drop-down menu that my audio synth preview output is set to Addictive Keys. Now when selecting a portion of MIDI, you'll see that it plays back in the Addictive Keys. If at any time I find a clip that I would like to use for my project, I can simply double-click it, and this will insert it into my project. Or I can simply click and drag that specific clip onto my tracks pane. The same thing can be achieved within the matrix view as well for MIDI clips. By going to the matrix view window, I can then click and drag this into the matrix view. You'll notice that if it's dragged into the matrix view, it's automatically set to loop. You can turn that off and on here. The same concepts apply with audio loops as they did with MIDI loops, in the sense that I can simply double-click and add it into my project. And just like the MIDI loops, I can also click and drag them. A couple of things to mention briefly is that if there are no synths in the project, you need to go to Insert Soft Synths and insert your desired soft synth. Otherwise, you'll hear no audio representation of the MIDI information. Another thing to mention is that auto preview is enabled by default. So if you disable auto preview, you must click the play button each time that you want to preview the selected audio file. And then lastly, MIDI groove clips loop indefinitely, but standard MIDI files play once and do not repeat. Now let's talk a little bit about what exactly is groove clip audio. Groove clip loops are .wav files that behave almost the same as Sony Media Software's acidized loops. Groove clips contain information about the audio content, including the original tempo, original reference pitch, the number of beats in the loop, and audio transient information. Because of this, groove clips are easy to use because they automatically adjust to your project's pitch markers and tempo. You can import existing loops or create your own using the loop construction view. By default, groove clips are loop enabled and transposed to match the project's pitch, as already stated. If you would like to change the default project pitch, however, you can go to Project and set default clip pitch here. Your project now uses the root node of your clips to transpose the project pitch, and you can use pitch markers at different points in your project to change the pitch. Let's talk a little bit more about the loop construction view. At the top, if you go to Views, you can scroll down and find Loop Construction View is here. Or you can also hit Alt plus the number 7 on your keyboard. Now you can see a direct representation of the audio clip in the loop construction view. I'm going to maximize this window and work more closely now with this loop. So I noticed that the loop does not actually begin and end on a full measure. Observe. This would not make for a good loop as it would sound choppy. So I can just simply click and drag this to the portion of the audio that it needs to be at to begin with, and back to the portion of the audio that it needs to end with. This should create a more pleasing loop. You'll notice a little bit of warble in the pitch of the loop. That's because it's set to an eighth note, when in actuality, it was set up to be in a whole. So by moving this back to the whole marker, it should sound a lot more cohesive. So now I have a recording of a guitar that I can loop within my project. Now, there are a number of different options that I can do from here. I can either save the loop and save it somewhere where I could go back and use it again. Or I could just simply take off the snap settings so that I can bring it over to the position where it actually needs to start. Turn my snap settings back on. So now, having groove clip looping enabled, I can simply click and drag this out infinitely. Let's talk a little bit more in depth about the controls that's found within the loop construction view. The preview button plays the current loop repeatedly, and you have to click it again to stop the preview. When you enable the loop button, the selected loop will then loop indefinitely. Your resolution, as found here, sets the resolution for the creation of markers or the slicing of the looped clip. This control uses the following note durations: no slice, whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note, 16th, and 32nd notes. I'm going to set mine to whole. The automatic markers appear at the note resolutions according to the resolution setting. At the eighth note setting, for instance, there are 8 markers per measure. This control works well for slicing audio that has more subtle changes in volume with few dramatic transients. The markers in a loop clip preserve the timing of the audio at that moment. Too few or too many markers can actually cause unwanted artifacts when a loop clip is stretched. The threshold control senses transients in your audio clip and assigns a marker at the beginning and end of each one that it finds. As you increase the number in this field, smaller transients are detected and the number of markers increases. The beats is simply the number of beats or quarter notes that are found in the clip. The BPM is the number of beats or quarter notes in the clip. By selecting the Pitch button, the Follow Project Pitch option transposes the loop, if necessary, to the key of the project. A loop recorded in the key of A, used in a project in the key of C, would then be transposed up 3 semitones if the Follow Project Pitch checkbox was checked. This box here will display the root note, which represents the key in which the loop was recorded. The Follow Project Pitch feature uses this information when checked to transpose the loop to match the project's key. Utilizing the course pitch found here, you can set the transposition of a clip, independent from the project's pitch, using this field. A positive number transposes the clip up by that number of semitones, and a negative number transposes the clip down by that number of semitones. Remember that if the Follow Project Pitch option is checked, the clip follows the project's pitch, so any transposition changes you make using this option are changes to the project's pitch, not the clip pitch. And then lastly, there's the fine pitch. The fine pitch field allows you to make tuning adjustments or to transpose the pitch of a clip up to 50 cents. There are 100 cents in one semitone, so a fine pitch setting of 1 adjusts the pitch up 1/100th of a semitone. The fine pitch option can fine-tune a slightly out-of-tune clip so that it is in pitch with the remaining clips that are in the project. These are your slicing markers. There are 2 types of slicing markers in the loop construction view, automatic and manual. Automatic markers appear in red and are automatically generated by Cakewalk by BandLab when you loop enable a clip. The one exception of this is if you import an acidized WAV file into Cakewalk by BandLab, because acidized WAV files always appear with manual slicing markers. Manual markers appear in purple. If you add a marker or move an automatic marker, it turns purple to show that it has been edited, as seen here. Alright, so now let's talk a little bit more about using pitch markers. As I spoke of, pitch markers can change the pitch at which a groove clip sounds. All groove clips within Cakewalk by BandLab that have the Follow Project Pitch option enabled adjust their pitch as they encounter pitch markers within the program. If there are no pitch markers, then all groove clips play at the default project pitch. To enable a clip's Follow Project Pitch option, select the clip and open the Clip Inspector. Select the Clip Inspector's Groove Clip section and make sure that the reference note in the field is correct. In this case, it is. When your project reaches a pitch marker, Cakewalk by BandLab transposes each groove clip that has the Follow Project Pitch option enabled by the difference between the clip's reference note and the current project pitch. So by ticking this small box, Follow Pitch, it's now going to follow the pitch within my project. To create a pitch marker, in the track view, right-click the time ruler. Select Create a Marker from the menu that appears. Now the marker dialog box appears. In the Groove Clip Pitch drop-down, select a pitch. And click OK. So as you can see, I've got the project pitch set to D here, and then back to our C note of here. Let's take a listen. If at any time I would like to move a pitch marker, I can simply click and drag the marker wherever I would find it applicable. And if at any time I'd like to delete the marker, I can simply click and hold it and press the delete button. When working with loops, it's important to remember that you can make any audio clip into a loop by selecting the looping checkbox in the Clip Inspector's Groove Clip section. Once looping is enabled, you can drag out loops to create multiple repetitions. There are, however, several other ways to enable looping as well. To enable or disable a clip for looping, select the clip that you want to use and do one of the following. You can go to the Clip Inspector's Groove Clip section and select the looping checkbox found here. You can also simply select the clip and press Ctrl L. And you can also right-click the clip and choose Groove Clip Looping from the drop-down menu here. To create repetitions of a loop, you must set the snap value if you want the loop to repeat at precise time boundaries. Your snap values are found here and described in more detail in a previous tutorial. Now move the cursor over the end of the loop-enabled clip until the cursor looks like this. When the cursor changes, click the end or the beginning of the loop and drag it to the right if you're dragging out from the end, or to the left if you're dragging from the beginning. The clip repeats itself until you stop dragging. If the snap grid button is on, which is this button here, you can create a partial loop as small as the snap grid setting allows. In this instance, it would be a whole note. So, for example, if your snap grid setting is set to quarter notes, then you can create partial repetitions as small as a quarter of a measure. Alright, so now having covered most of the ins and outs of what looping is and how it can be utilized, let's go ahead and create a loop ourselves in a blank project. So the first thing I want to do is set the BPMs of my project. I'm going to set this to 85 BPMs, and my time signature will be at a 4/4. By going to Project and Default Groove Clip Pitch, I know already that it's set to C, so that's my default groove clip pitch. So anything that I import with a C should sound just fine. I'm going to go ahead and import a piece of audio here. This will automatically create a track for that particular piece of audio. And now I'm going to find some drums. Having found some drums now that I feel like I'm going to use for this project, I'm going to go ahead and set my snap settings to a whole note. You'll notice that as I click and drag this clip, it's going to snap now to that whole note setting. Because this is sort of an ambient sound that will be played in the background, I'm not so much worried about the timing on this particular track. You'll notice that the top edge of this particular track is beveled, meaning that it's already Groove Clip Loop enabled. So I'm going to drag it out to about here. Okay, we have some drums. Now I'm going to find a little bit of guitar. I know that this is in the key of C, so if I already have it labeled as such, I'll just drag that straight in, and it should be just fine. Okay, I'm going to drag this one in now as well. Alright, now I want to add some bass guitar. So I've created a bass guitar track using the soft synth that's found within Cakewalk by BandLab, the SI or Studio Instruments bass guitar. I'm going to go now to the funk section. Having found a loop that I like from this, I'll just simply click and drag that in here. You'll notice the bevel at the top of the track, which means I can automatically loop this as far as I'd like.
All right, so let's talk about starting a beat here. Now, I guess it depends on your style. I'm very much a '90s boom bap beat maker. The best of the, that's the sound that resonates with me. It's what I want to hear.
Right.
So your beats per minute is going to be between 80 and 100. Usually between 90 and 95 is kind of an average beats per minute is what you're going to start with. In the old style of making beats, I would build the drum track first, and then I would typically, either lay down. I would come up with a melody to the drum track, or I would put a bass line down next. Under the more modern way I've been doing it is because I use these samples. I will start with the sample, and I'll pick something, and I'll start to build around it, and I'll find something that resonates with me, and I'll just sort samples, and I'll go through them, and I'll pick what I want. And I have this enormous library built here, and I have it divided into melody samples and supplemental sounds, which in the sample world is also known as loops and one-shots, right?
Right.
But I have them labeled according to what purpose they play for me. A melody sample is a sample around which you have to adapt the other sounds, right? A supplemental sound is a sound that you could mix into an existing project, and it would work as an additional sound over the main melody. And I have everything divided that way. So, like in here, and lately I've taken to using drum loops instead of building my own drum tracks because it's fast and easy and it sounds great, and I'm busy and it works. I still do craft a lot of my own drum tracks, and I could show you lots of examples of that. But lately, I've been really diving into using the drum loops. But anyway, if we're going to start, we would go into the melody samples, and I have it all, I have it sorted into different instruments. Like, do I feel like making a piano-based beat or a guitar-based beat, or start with choirs? I have melodies to use next here, and I'll just come in here and start listening to a few of these. Sure, let's try this. So you can tell right away when you bring the sample in, it needs to loop after the fourth bar. So even if I don't know what the beats per minute is, I can figure it out by just sort of troubleshooting.
Okay.
Right? So if I go down to 60, if I go down to 75, you can see it gets closer. But we know it's 69, so I hit 69, boom, it lands right on the fourth bar, right after the fourth measure.
Nice.
So then I'll go into, I'll bring my grid up to whole and snap by, and I'll drag this over to get it looping. So now, if I play it, a little clip there. I could probably fix that if I wanted to, but we're going to be fast, quick, and dirty. Now, you don't have to leave the sample as is. You could pitch it up, pitch it down. If you want to make it your own, you could load it into Serato Sampler. You can start to chop it up, play around with it. You don't have to, though. The stock samples sound great the way they are. So the next thing I'll do is I'll go pick a drum track, and I'll play around. Now this is when I'm in quick and dirty mode. Like if I'm really inspired, I'll sit and I'll craft my own custom drums. But I'm a busy guy. I got 3 kids, a full-time job. I don't have a lot of time for music. I'm very quick and dirty now. Everything's got to be fast, or I don't have time for it. So let's come in here. So 69 or 138. Now I want to pick a drum sample that's close to that beats per minute. It doesn't have to match it. It doesn't have to be exact.
Right.
But I don't want like a 90. If I get a 90, it's too in the middle. Okay, yeah, this actually worked. That. Well, that works.
Okay.
You want to do groove clipping? Groove works, but only if it cuts off at the right point. Like if I put on groove clip looping now, and then I try to stretch it, it didn't work. Why didn't
it? It's already groove clip looped. That's why.
Oh. No, it just did it. It just did it. But I want to see if it loops at the right spot. So let me mute this. It's not doing it at the right spot. What I would have to do is cut this off right here. I have to turn on that, clip it there, now turn it to groove clip. But I actually don't use groove clip because because I like to chop stuff up, right? And it creates one continuous track that you then have to chop up later. Like, I'm a chopper. I chop everything. So I just drag everything.
Interesting. Okay.
I generally use snap by instead of snap to. You use snap to for certain things, but generally speaking, snap by is the king for everything. Okay, so now we've got a basic start. Okay, we need a bass line. Or we can start bringing in other samples. So I usually use MIDI for my bass line, and I play something on my keyboard.
Okay.
And I have a certain bass sound that I use as my main stock sound, and then I might vary it later, and it's called dark bass. And I go in here and select that. Now with your MIDI keyboard, I have to change a setting on my keyboard that makes the notes play in response to the DAW, not the local. Otherwise, what happens is you get two instruments playing, because my DAW I just changed the instrument to bass on my DAW, but my keyboard will try to play piano at the same time. So I got to turn off the piano so it only plays the bass. Okay. This is I was talking about that snap to, snap by. Mm-hmm. My first note probably didn't land exactly on the downbeat, and I don't quantize. I rarely quantize. I feel like it creates a robotic sound. I used to. It was one of the mistakes I used to make in my earlier years. I quantized everything. And then my beats came out robotic sounding. Well, I don't know what note this landed on. If I go into view event list, I can see it. Sorry, where is it? Right there, event list. And come down here. This is just for academic purposes. Okay, I did land after the downbeat by 0.2 milliseconds, right? Well, what if I didn't? What if I came 2 milliseconds before the downbeat? If I drag this now to the far left, I'm going to make it go out of sync with the beat, because if it started just before the downbeat and I'm drag it left, I'm at the beginning of my timer. So what I do is I always drag the beat back a little bit, and I'll just bring it to here. And that way I don't screw up the timing of this. You leave a little bit of breathing space at the beginning. Now I can just drag this over. And let's hear it. You hear the bass part? There's one timing issue. This note coming up. Yeah, I don't like the second note. The did. So I'm going to fix that now. I'll just double click here to bring up the piano roll. Here's all my notes. There's my bass line. This note right here doesn't sound right. Right there. And I can see from my other notes that it should be changing about halfway through the measure. It's a little late, I think. But right now my snap to grid is on. And if I drag it with my snap to grid on, it's going to stay robotic and it'll stay aligned to whatever it landed. So I'm going to pull that off and just drag this back, drag this up. Now let's hear it. Perfect. Could you still hear it?
No, the bass was not.
The bass keeps coming and going?
Yeah.
Oh, that's no good. Can you hear it there?
Yeah.
Well, now you can hear what I did to this pig. I just fixed the timing so it's perfect.
Okay.
Okay, so that part's done. And that's the only MIDI that I'm going to bring into this project. I typically only use, I almost always do bass with MIDI. I know I do have some virtual instruments that give me decent bass sounds, but I love this bass sound. It's so perfect. So now let's add some extra little, supplemental pieces. Now, obviously at the end, you see I have a drum track that's just looping forever. You can't have that. You need to add variation. So you need to have it cutting off at certain parts and dropping back in, and you need to have some, some risers and some cymbals, and you need to variate it. But I don't worry about that stuff till the end. I'm just sort of creating the basic DNA of the beat so that you can get a flavor for the sound. You're in creativity mode. All those little bells and whistles you can add to anything.
Right.
You don't need to hear them right now. So I'm really just trying to see what else might sound cool over this. Like, I think a choir might sound cool over this. So let's go to my supplemental sound file. And under vocals, choir. And start listening to stuff in here. That would work really well. Listen to that. It's actually tailor-made for it. And it's a little quiet, so I have my mixer down below me. So you can't see that, but I got this really nice mixer right here. So I can just go zing, 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 and it changes the sound without me having to go in and do it in the software.
Nice.
I don't know if my camera's right. I can't see myself, so hopefully it's okay. This is quiet, so I'm going to crank it up. Right, you can see the wave format file. The wave form is very low. So let's go process, apply effect, normalize, and you don't want to normalize to 100%. It'll be way too loud. So I drop it down to -3 or 4 decibels. Hit OK. Boom! Look, it's much bigger now. Ooh, now it's super loud. The wrong keys are. I need to pitch it up and down. I think I need to pitch it up, so I'm going to go process, transpose. Let's try 1 semitone. Now I could bring up a sampler and do this a different way, but I'm so like, let's just get it done. Snap, snap, snap. I don't have time for. No, it's not quite right. So let's do it one more. So what I did is I undid that change. I don't want to transpose it one note and then transpose the transposed version again. I undo the transpose to bring it back to the original, and then I transpose it by 2 semitones and try that.
Gotcha.
That's not right. It's getting there though. It's really close. I can hear it. I want it to be. I can hear it in my head. I'm a bad singer though. There we go. Got it. But the timing's off because this is at 70 and this is at 69. So I need to stretch it to make it line up to the beat better. And I have a pretty good idea. Now this is where you got to use your eyeball, because there's no grid snap that you could set it to. So in that case, you undo your snap to grid, and I can tell this is the downbeat. No, it isn't. That's right before the end. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. It's pretty close though. It's just a little. You can see this doesn't stretch. This should stretch right to the beat. See? There's that little gap right there.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I'm going to use snap to and not snap by. I want it to snap directly to the downbeat. Hold Control and Shift, drag your track over, then let go. I'll bring it back to by. Now it should line up perfectly, hopefully.
Yep.
Okay, so another thing to know when you're stretching samples. So let's say I go to save this file now. I can go File, Save, that's fine, and I'll just call it. I'll call it the Robert McClellan beat. But watch, if I go to hit File, Save As, now there's 2 different file types in Cakewalk. There's the P for project, and then there's the B for bundle. See this?
Mm-hmm.
Projects containing audio snap markers or time stretched data cannot be saved in this bundle format. So if you leave something stretched and you see this 101%, that's a stretched sample. It cannot be saved as a bundle. So let's say I want to send you this file as a bundle, right? So much easier than here's the project, and here's all the associated audio files, and you need to connect the dots. It's a pain in the butt. A bundle brings all the audio into the file itself, and then when you can send it to somebody on the other side of the world, they can extract it, and it comes out exactly perfect. Right. So to do that, I have to bounce this to clip because it's at 101%. It's stretched. So if I go bounce to clip now it's a 69 beat per minute sample, not a 70 beat per minute sample. And I don't think I have any other stretching here. So I'm going to try and save this as a bundle now and see if that error message comes back. Nope. Boom. Wow. Okay, so I got rid of that problem. So if you know that ahead of time, you're not going to take your stretched sample and copy and paste it all over your project. You're going to bounce it to clip first, then stretch it, then copy and paste it all over your project. Because if you don't, then you run into that problem, and then later you got to come back and fix it, and it's a big pain in the butt. So, because now the whole thing's pitched up. So let me hear how it sounds. Maybe it's better. Not bad. Let's keep it for fun. All right, so let's add another instrument. We're not done with this guy. I say we add a string.
Right on.
A nice string. I'm going to use a MIDI string, but then I'll have to record it. Well, maybe, you know what? No. Let's bring in something you can hear. So I'll bring in Massive. Massive's got a bazillion strings on it. That's way down here. If you bring your cursor right here and you see it turns into those little arrows, and you can just drag tracks around, which makes life easy. Here's Massive, so let's find a string. Okay, let's go with that. Let's hit record. I don't like having my metronome on. I just want to hear the music, and then I lose the kind of the tick in. So that's fine. I just don't start at the beginning. I'll start somewhere in the middle, and I'll just move it. I'll move it afterwards. It takes a while to get used to it, right? But I know when the downbeat's about to come, and I lift my finger off right before then because I'm going to loop it. I don't want to bring in this first note again at the end because then I got to edit it afterwards. I want to lift my finger off the keyboard and just be able to start working with what I have right away. So now if I take this, now the other thing is with MIDI, even though this is a virtual instrument, that's why you're able to hear it. Otherwise, if it's playing out on my keyboard, I got to route it through my mixer into my audio interface into the system, and because of our Skype setup, it's causing problems. But because it's a virtual instrument, the computer itself is generating the sound, even though the MIDI keyboard is driving it. But that's kind of the best of both worlds because you now have audio here, even though it looks like a MIDI track, it is in fact audio playing through my sound drivers of my computer. And because it's MIDI, I can go in and start playing with it. So I can double click on it and come down to the piano roll. And there's my notes. And I can, not only can I edit the notes, but I can edit the velocities right here. Mm-hmm. So I like to leave it fairly natural, but I don't have a weighted hammer keyboard that I'm always manipulating the velocities instead of going with whatever's natural. It depends though. It depends what instrument it is. So I'll just draw like a nice straight line here. Keep it fairly level, but I'll listen to it. Maybe some of them I want to bring in softer. Okay, that should loop nicely. So then I'll go. Gotta go back to Smart Tool. Make sure
it look too easy.
It's a piece of cake. So now it should loop. Sometimes you run into problems there. It depends what type of instrument you're using. Some instruments are monochromatic, so you can only play one note at a time, and so you have to make sure that this note is finished playing before this one starts. But even if it's a polychromatic, like even if it's you can play polyphonic is the word I'm looking for, monophonic or polyphonic. Even if it's polyphonic, if this note is playing when this one starts, it can sometimes create problems. And if that's the case, you have to go in and adjust the timing of the beginning of the loop. But if I look at the piano roll, you can generally tell from looking at the piano roll. So if I zoom in on this, yeah, I can see this one goes over the beat a little, and this one starts after the beat. But as long as this note actually starts, right? Because this note can't interfere with that note. So that's why you have to test the loop, because sometimes when you go to play it, this note will finish and this note won't sound off because the keyboard's still working on this one. Started. Now, let's add some reverb to that. I'll just use the same stock reverb because it's easy. You can't see it. Okay, so let's say we feel pretty good about where it's at the moment. Now let's try to like what I was talking about at the beginning, how you can't just leave the drums like that. You've got to add some variation in your drums, or else it's going to sound terrible. So a good example would be right before the string comes in, I'm going to drop the drums out, and then I'm going to bring them back in with a big crash. It's a really good strategy, generally speaking. But I'll just, I'll wing it, right? I'll look at this. I know that's probably the snare. Let me hear it. I'm going to get rid of all that. Now if I bring the whole... A little more variation, so it's not so boring. It's not the same thing forever.
Right.
And now let's add a cymbal in there. So I'll insert an audio track. I'll go find my cymbals, which I have nicely tucked away over here in my drum section. I have a reviewed and approved, and then even more, I have my little awesome subset. I use this cymbal all the time. Cymbals, you don't want them super loud, though, or they'll overpower the mix. Here. You can't see the... Down, like... Oops. A little more. I want that next kick to drop. Okay, that's pretty good. And now what I'm going to do is bring in a riser. I love risers, especially for hip hop. They're really useful. um, that one's probably good. Let's try it. You shut up. Now insert an audio track here. And we'll bring it into the mix. Get rid of this. Oh, you can see I dropped it here, but it's like way off to the right. That happens with some audio files. They decide they want to be out in the nosebleeds over here. So you have to go pick them up and bring them back. There we go. Now, let's zoom in and look at this guy. I want the cymbal brought back over, so I just got to move you over. Here. This should go about here, and I don't want it to go all the way to the top. It's too much. Let's hear that. Oh, see this swell at the bottom? The bottom, that's too much. So I want to bring it back to maybe here. And then now I'm going to use snap 2. And snap it right to the beat. Oh, no, it's snapping the beginning 2, not the end 2. So you have to do this by hand. So you just want to make sure it drops right at the beat. Right about there. And then you got to listen to it, and it might come in too harsh. I might need to add a little fade at the beginning, like that. I'll just do it. It probably sounds better. Okay, now it's going to be too loud, so I got to bring the volume down. You can see down here the risers here on track 3. Let me label them so you know what's going on. Oh, I just hit a button that I shouldn't have hit. Let me move you over here. Okay, now you can see in the mixer that the cymbal's down here. The riser shouldn't be too far from the cymbal. Not loud enough. Let's crank it up a little. Now you could use that to make a nice little intro to it as well. So if I bring this down, let's drag the whole thing back a little. So now what I'm going to do is my sample, my main sample, which is this guy, right? I built my whole beat around this sample. So this is going to be, this forms like the identity of the beat. Oops, yeah, I never do that. I think I already screwed it up. Let me move. No. Got to keep it to the grid. Always keep it to the grid. If you lose the grid, you're lost. So I'm going to bring this out 1 unit. Then we're going to bring the riser and the cymbal out to here. Might want to bring some of this stuff in. Let's try this. Let's bring the string with it just for fun. See what it sounds like.
Wow.
A lot of it is just trial and error, okay? Well, let's try this. I think, you go into your sound library. I hear this. This sounds like it could work. I can hear it in my head, but it doesn't quite fit. So let's bring it in, stretch the time, change the pitch, find where it fits in. Oh, it sounds a little too blunt. Let's bring the volume down, add a little reverb. It blends in real nice. And you just try stuff, and it works. Okay, let's hear it. Let me hear it again now that I got the timing of that second instrument. Leave the bar open for the rest. All right. we're done. Feel good about it. Yep, I could definitely. You could still do more with it. I generally like to structure my beats to have 16 bars of verse followed by 8 bars of chorus. This is right now 8 bars of verse looped, so I haven't really built a chorus here. So if we wanted to structure if we wanted to really flesh this out and make it into a full song with a chorus, I would need to do something else.
All right, well, Adamental, I greatly appreciate your time. Once again, thank you so much for sharing just your creative process with my audience, with myself, showing us some of your workarounds and how you actually create loops within Cakewalk. One thing I would like to get out there is, where can they find you, your beats, your music?
Well, I'm on YouTube at Adamental Hip Hop. Any of my music, like I do have an old album that I released called State of Mind, but it was back in my secular days, so it's got some dark cursing type material in it, so be warned. But if you want to hear that, the album's called State of Mind, and it is on Spotify and iTunes and everywhere else, so you could go stream it and listen to that. That's from 2013, back when I was kind of having my blow-up renaissance with the secular rap world. My sound has evolved tremendously since then. Best way to connect with me is on Twitter, and I do like to support artists. Like if I really like your music, I'll come and help you out. I'll throw you a beat, try to support you, try to get you working. I can make beats in my sleep. It's no stress. It's no sweat. So I'm pretty charitable and generous with them.
Once again, man, greatly appreciate your time and your genius on this, man. It was just really good seeing your creative process and how you put all this together. So all of the links that he just mentioned as far as how to find him and where to find his music will be included in the description of this video and in the description of this podcast. So definitely give him a shout out. Go over and hit him up. If you're an up-and-coming artist, send him some of your stuff. Like he just said, he's willing to help out people, especially if you're, you got your head on straight and you're doing it for the right reasons. So definitely